Today, we're going to conduct something of a forensic analysis. We're going to look at a very specific and very damaging form of psychological manipulation. We're going to break it down methodically, how it works, why it's so incredibly effective, and what it actually does to the human brain. So, let's begin. Let's just set the scene. You're in an argument. You know, you didn't start it. But as it goes on, the conversation starts to twist, and then it turns. It turns back on you. Suddenly, your memory is being questioned, your motives are under a microscope, your emotions are being used as evidence against you, until the floor just falls out from under you. And there you are, apologizing. Not because you were wrong, but because apologizing feels like the only way to make the spinning, the confusion, finally stop. If that feeling of complete disorientation resonates somewhere deep inside you, you need to know you are not alone. And you are not imagining it. What you've experienced actually has a name. To really see how it works, let's think about a person we can call Claire. Claire's been in a relationship for about 3 years. And if you asked her to describe herself, she'd say she's too emotional and bad with memory. She's constantly apologizing for misremembering conversations she was sure happened one way, but her partner insists happened another. It's gotten so bad she started keeping a secret journal, not for her thoughts or feelings, but just to have some proof, some evidence that her own life happened the way she remembers it. She's ashamed of it, she shows it to no one.
To understand what's really happening to Claire, and to so many others, we have to treat this like a crime scene. And the very first step in any investigation is to identify the weapon, to identify the tactic being used.
The clinical term is gaslighting. It actually comes from a 1930s play where a husband secretly dims the gas lights in his house and then convinces his wife she's going crazy when she notices. And that's the key right there. Gaslighting is not just a lie. It's not a simple disagreement. A lie is a lie, but a sustained, systematic campaign to make you question your own sanity, your own perception of reality, that's gaslighting. It's the pattern, it's the consistency, it's the intent to destabilize that makes it a profound form of abuse. What makes these tactics so powerful, so insidious, is how normal they can sound. That never happened. That's a direct assault on your memory. You're being too sensitive. That takes your completely valid emotional reaction and reframes it as a flaw in your character. You're crazy. Well, that one's a direct attack on your sanity itself. And you made me do this. That's a complete flip of responsibility. These aren't just phrases. They are precision tools used to take apart a person's reality one piece at a time. You know, gaslighting isn't just random. It's not chaotic. It often follows a very predictable script. In fact, there's a specific defensive reaction that manipulators use when they're held accountable. And it's so common that researchers have given it a name. That name is DARVO. It's an acronym, and it perfectly lays out the 3-step dance a perpetrator does to get out of taking responsibility. Honestly, understanding this pattern is like someone handing you the manipulator's playbook, and once you see it, you can never ever unsee it. The power of DARVO is its sequence. It always happens in this order. First, the deny. I never did that. Then, when you present them with evidence, the attack. How dare you accuse me? You're the one who's unstable. You're always making things up. And finally, the masterstroke, the most twisted step of all, reverse victim and offender. All of a sudden, they are the one who's been hurt. They're the victim of your accusations. You came looking for accountability, and you leave feeling like you're the one who owes them an apology. And this is what makes the tactic so completely devastating. It doesn't just work on the victim, it works on the people around you. Studies have actually found that when a perpetrator uses DARVO, outside observers see the victim as less believable and the perpetrator as less responsible. The manipulator turns our own empathy into a weapon against the real victim, leaving them isolated, disbelieved, and totally silenced. So, this all leads to the big question, right? Why is this so effective? Why doesn't the victim's brain just reject all the lies? The answer isn't about weakness, it isn't about intelligence. The answer is in our biology. The trap is neurological. This is the question that haunts people in these situations, the one they ask themselves over and over. Why am I not stronger? Why didn't I see this? Why can't I just walk away? But the truth is, these tactics work because they hijack the very wiring in our brain that's supposed to keep us safe and connected to other people. At the very heart of this experience is something psychologists call cognitive dissonance. Your brain is trying to hold two completely opposite ideas in your head at the same time. On one hand, you have the fantasy, this person loves me, they are my partner, my family, my safety. But on the other hand, you have the truth, this person is hurting me, they are a source of danger. Holding both of those truths at once creates an intense, almost unbearable static in your brain. Your brain can't live with that static for long. It has to resolve the conflict. And because our need for attachment, for connection, is one of the most powerful primal drives we have, the brain often takes the easiest path. It chooses to deny the abuse in order to preserve the relationship. This isn't a conscious choice. It's a survival mechanism. Your brain learns that believing the fantasy feels safer than facing the terrifying reality of being harmed by someone you depend on. This deep, confusing, powerful attachment to an abuser has a name. It's a trauma bond, and it gets welded into place by a psychological principle called intermittent reinforcement. That's just a fancy term for a cycle of cruelty followed by unpredictable moments of kindness or apology. Think of a slot machine. You don't know when the reward is coming, so you keep pulling the lever. This pattern creates a neurological bond that is literally as powerful and as real as a chemical addiction. In fact, psychologists have identified 4 key conditions that lock this bond in place. First, there has to be a real threat, and that threat can be psychological, not just physical. Second, there are those little moments of perceived kindness that give you a hit of hope. Third, isolation from anyone who might give you an outside perspective. And fourth, a feeling that you can't escape. When all 4 of those are present, a person isn't staying because they're weak. They are psychologically and neurologically trapped.
To get even more granular, neuroscientists see this as an attack on the brain's prediction error system. See, your brain is always trying to predict what's going to happen next. When someone you trust is suddenly cruel, it creates a huge error signal. It's confusing. The gaslighter exploits that moment of confusion. They step in and offer you a simple but poisonous explanation. The problem isn't my behavior. The problem is your perception. Over time, your brain actually learns to stop trusting its own signals.
And I really need you to hear this part. This is not just a psychological phenomenon. It is physical. This kind of sustained abuse causes tangible, measurable changes to the brain. The amygdala, which is your brain's fear center, becomes overactive, putting you in a state of chronic anxiety, always walking on eggshells. And even more terrifying, the hippocampus, the part of your brain responsible for memory, can physically shrink from prolonged exposure to stress. This isn't you being bad with memory. This is your brain being actively damaged.
So, with all the evidence laid out, we shift from analysis to recovery. If any part of this has sounded familiar, this last section is for you. It's about knowing that the path back to your own mind, to your own reality, is possible. The first and most critical piece of evidence is this: what happened to you was real. It wasn't in your head. It was a known pattern of abuse. It had a name.
And because it was real, it means you are not the things you were told you were. You are not crazy. You are not too sensitive. Your emotional reactions were a normal response to a completely abnormal situation. Your memory isn't broken, it was under attack.
Let's be crystal clear about the motive here. This was not a misunderstanding. Your reality was deliberately taken from you. It was destabilized by someone who needed your confusion to maintain their control.
So what are the first steps back? Well, first, document. Write it down. Not for them, but for you. Create an external anchor for your experience so it feels solid. Second, set boundaries. You don't have to participate in those dizzying arguments. A simple, firm, "we see this differently and I'm not discussing it anymore," is a complete sentence. And third, and this one is crucial, seek validation. Talk to a friend, a family member, a professional. Gaslighting works best in the dark. Bringing it into the light is the antidote.
The journey back can feel huge, so start small. Don't try to make sense of everything all at once. Just find one thing, one tiny thing that you remember from today. The taste of your coffee, a song you heard, the way the light looked at a certain time. Find that one small, undeniable truth and just hold on to it.
Because that small memory is proof. It's proof that your mind still works. It is yours. It is real. And so are you.